everybody. My name is Jeff James, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing for Thomas Nelson Publishers. I've been in the publishing industry for just about 3 years, which isn't a long time, but I came from the world of technology and consumer goods marketing, and it's been really fun to apply some of the learnings from those industries here to the publishing world. So chances are you're watching this because you've written a book and it's about something that you're really passionate about, which is fantastic. But what I want to walk through with you a little bit here today is about how to think a little bit more proactively about marketing your book, because the sort of unfortunate situation is that there are hundreds of thousands of books published every year just in the United States. And if we're not really purposeful in how you position your book and talk about your book and get other people to know about your book, it's really hard. It's kind of like asking the reader to find a needle in a haystack. And so we want to make it a little bit easier for that needle to stand out. So before you start thinking about marketing your book, it's really a great idea to become a little bit more informed on a lot of different elements of the genre and the audience and the folks that you're trying to sell that book to. One of the things to really think about is the genre or the category of the book. Is it growing? Is it stagnant? Is it shrinking? One of the things that people don't think a lot about sometimes when you're writing a book is that you have a lot of competition, not just because of the bestsellers in that genre, but in some genres, such as like business or personal growth, a lot of the readers have migrated to digital content like blogs or podcasts. And so you're not just competing with other books in the genre, you're also competing against videos and podcasts and a lot of other things that are out there for free. So it makes it just a little bit harder to earn that sale. In terms of the genre that you're writing for, the best advice I have is to do a little bit of Google research. There are some conferences and some industry groups that publish a lot of free content on the trends associated with your genre. And so do a little bit of skunk work on the internet, and I think you'll find a lot from that perspective. The thing I want you to really think about, though, is how to get feedback from real potential readers. It's really easy these days with survey tools like SurveyMonkey and other similar tools to put some information out there to potential readers, get their reaction to your book idea, maybe how you describe the book, maybe the title, the subtitle. You can even test the cover of your book. But you can get feedback from folks that are real potential buyers of the book, and that's really invaluable. So I really encourage you to think about writing a short description of your book, maybe write out some of the benefits of what you think that book is, and then put those in front of real potential readers. Now, it's going to be real tempting for you to just kind of circulate that survey among your friends and family, but they're going to be just a little bit biased in their feedback for you. So a lot of these tools like SurveyMonkey, you can actually purchase random potential consumers or readers for a fairly small cost, and they can get them to take your survey, give you real honest feedback from people that you don't have any relationship with. And I think that's one of the best things that you can do to sort of open your eyes to how attractive your book really is, and maybe find some ways to tweak how you're describing it. Once you've generated a little bit of feedback on your book, hopefully with some survey answers, but also maybe some open-ended questions, and you just sort of read what people share with you about your book idea, now it's time to really zero in on the audience and the messaging that's going to really attract your target audience. And bear with me, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this messaging thing. Messaging is really about how you describe the book in a way that's differentiated and also really compelling to your target audience. And what I find is a lot of people try to scoot ahead a little bit and say, oh, how am I going to get my book out on Facebook or advertising or whatever. And that's frankly the easy part. The harder part is for you to really take the time to spend time on thinking about how is this book different from all the other books. So let's spend a little bit of time on that. The first thing you need to think about is something we describe as the motivating impulse. What is that motivating impulse, that inner need that a reader has that's going to connect them to what you're writing about. A better way to say that is what kind of motivating impulse are you writing for to solve a problem that the reader might have or something that they're curious about. You have to really zero in on what that motivating impulse really is and then architect your book and the marketing around that. Here are a few examples from books that we've actually published in terms of a motivating impulse. So, I feel like I'm always losing my cool with my kids. How can I get in control of my emotions? So that would be a great motivating impulse for a parenting book. Another one might be, my husband and I just can't get it on the same page about money and it's driving me crazy. So that's a really great one for a financial management type book. And even for a narrative nonfiction book like a memoir or a history book, something like, I'd love to lose myself in a true story that makes me feel a little bit like a little bit better person and maybe teaches me something. So even something that specific can help, really drive the focus of your marketing. So the next thing we think about when devising the messaging plan is to think about the emotions that the potential reader is going to feel. Are you trying to address somebody who's feeling a lot of anxiety, and maybe your book helps them alleviate that anxiety and become more confident? Is there confusion about a topic? Maybe you're trying to teach them a skill or teach them a lesson of some sort. Kind of put yourself in the shoes of what that reader is really feeling, and then build the messaging of how you describe the book to really target that emotion the best that you can. The next piece of the messaging puzzle is about author credibility. So this is really about you. Once the reader is hooked with the emotion and the relevancy of what you're writing about, the next obvious question that comes to their mind is, why would I read something from that particular person? So this is where you get to talk a little bit about your credentials, not just from a technical perspective. Maybe you have a degree, or you're a pastor, or you're someone that has some experience. But many times empathy is the credibility factor that people are looking for. In other words, have you gone through the problem that you're writing about so that you can kind of bring it from a very personal perspective to the reader. So finally, when you think about the credibility and the emotions and the motivating trigger of your messaging, now you can wrap it into really a summary statement, kind of the big promise or the big idea of the book. See if you can wrap it up in the tightest sentence or phrase that you can, and see if it makes people kind of get hooked a little bit when you say it. You can kind of practice on your friends and family, like, hey, I'm writing about this, and then boom, give them the big idea and see what they react to. Some of the very simple big ideas that we've published, these are big ideas from real books that we've published. One is, you can be as close to God as you choose to be. So that's kind of intriguing a little bit from a spiritual growth perspective. Here's another one for folks that are dealing with some emotions. You can learn to make wise choices even in the midst of raw emotions. So it's about how to calm down and focus your decisions. So those are just simple examples, but see if you can do that for your title. The final piece of the messaging structure that I encourage you to think about is, now that you've got the big idea encapsulated, think of this as almost kind of like back of the book benefit statements. What are 3, 4, 5 things that very practically the readers are going to take away from the book? It's kind of like these are the things that give them confidence that you're going to be able to deliver on the big idea. Here are a few examples. So, learn simple 3-step process for finding common ground with your spouse on the family budget. So that's a very practical takeaway. Here's another one. Understand 5 common obstacles to a close relationship with God and learn practical strategies to overcome each one. So those are little promises, little benefit statements that support the overall big idea. So we have a really good foundation now in terms of how you're describing your book in a way that connects with a reader, gives them the promise, and also differentiates it from other potential books that they could purchase. Now you're finally ready to get into what most people think of as part of the marketing plan. And I'm going to talk about 3 sections. First, I'm going to talk about the awareness or the advocacy part of the plan. Obviously, this is how you get the word out initially about your book, so they're aware of it. The second part of the plan is going to be around engagement and interest building. That's a little different than just making someone aware of a book. This is something that's going to hook them into becoming a little bit more interested, maybe spending a few more seconds considering your book. And then finally, the section on conversion. How do we close that sale? So let's cover all three of those, and that forms the real foundation of the rest of your plan. How does someone who does not know you, has never heard of your book, find out about the book? This is a really big challenge. As I mentioned, hundreds of thousands of books are published every year, but you're not just competing against other books, are you? You're really competing against the time and attention that we as consumers in the Western world, face every single day. It's been literally measured that the typical consumer in America, for example, faces about 5,000 commercial messages that are bombarding them every single day. So how in the world are you going to cut through that? That's the big challenge of this part of the plan. One of the best secrets to get around all that noise is to really zero in on where your audience is most likely to be found. So this sounds a little bit obvious, but you'd be surprised how often people put out very broad general messages in a sea of noise, and they didn't really think about where are the most likely readers hanging out. This, of course, is where things like the internet and social media comes in really handy, because you can find those people a lot easier, either through social media communities or blogs or targeted advertising. So there's a lot that we can do there. But it's really important to really think about those target readers and then mapping it to where they are most likely to be interested in finding information that your book is going to relate to. So I'm going to cover three quick areas of awareness building, and the three quick categories are publicity, paid advertising, and the final category is word of mouth, which includes a lot of social media, as you can imagine, in these days. Now, for publicity, I know we have a completely separate class that you can take on media and publicity, so I won't spend a lot of time there, other than to say that in this modern day, we have a lot of choices in terms of media consumption. And that's a benefit and a detriment. It makes it a little more difficult because there's a lot of places that you could potentially pitch your book to. But on the other hand, there are a lot of niche media sources that are more aligned with the kind of readers that you're searching for. The other thing to think about for publicity is sometimes you want to start in the digital sphere, because there are so many podcasters and bloggers and even YouTubers that are really hungry for content. And sometimes those digital outlets, if you will, are bigger than some of the traditional media that you think you might want, like a radio station or even a television station. You're probably also aware, of course, that in our digital age, the ability from a paid media perspective, an advertising perspective, is so different. I really highly recommend that you don't burn money in the early days on things like print ads or very broad ads that really aren't very targeted. Particularly in the early days, you want to find opportunities to find very targeted audiences on Facebook, on LinkedIn, Google advertising. All of these digital platforms can really help you zero in on the exact demographic, perhaps the right behavioral targeting, such as people that are searching for parenting advice or any of that kind of stuff. These things are highly available and targeted on the internet, and that's really where you should start to see if you get traction on any paid advertising. However, for most of you, before you even get into any of the paid marketing tactics, I highly recommend that you focus first on word of mouth, and therefore the ability to sort of share word of mouth on social media. This is really where you can test your messaging to see if you really got it right. If you created the best marketing messaging for the title, the ability for you to start generating some interest and some buzz in a more viral fashion is usually fairly high. If you're not generating that kind of viral interest, you may want to go back and work on your messaging again to see if you can get it a little more interesting and differentiated. So word of mouth is one of those things that people talk about, but it's really very, very difficult. However, it is free, and that's a good thing. We like that in this stage. But there are a couple areas that I'd like you to think about. First is, are there influencers in your realm of relationships, in your network? Can you make a list of 5, 10, maybe 20 people that you would consider the most influential folks that you know? They could be people that write blogs, they could be people that are highly active on social media, have a lot of followers. They could be a friend of a friend who's in the media somehow. But try to really think through your networks of relationships and find the most influential people that you can who would have some interest, some likelihood of being able to share a little bit of information about your book. Once you've done that and you're going to approach some of those influencers, you can start thinking about the tactics in your plan that you're going to reach them, perhaps give them some sample posts that you recommend, maybe even some thank you incentives to go ahead and share that on your behalf. The next part of the sort of word of mouth piece of the plan is really start thinking about the broader network that you have. So sometimes we call these launch teams, really it's friends and family. This is where you put them to work. You might have a few hundred of those folks. And again, if you just equip them with some simple calls to action, say, would you please think about posting this about my book, or post this link along with any comments that you have, I would really appreciate it. You'd be surprised how far 50, 100, 200 people can carry your message, because remember, they also have networks of folks that are following them. Okay, so those were a few thoughts about awareness, the awareness part of your marketing plan. And now let's talk a little bit about building interest and some engagement in your message. Now, this is very different from awareness. Some people kind of jam all this stuff together a little bit, and sometimes they're just very different tactics. So we already created awareness. Hopefully we have thousands of people that are aware of your book. But now the challenge is not just that they're aware, but also now that they're interested. We want them to sort of give us a few extra seconds of consideration. So how do you get their attention for a little bit longer to generate interest in your book? One of the best ways to generate interest these days is content marketing. So as the name implies, we're thinking about how to use content in order to pull people a little bit further into interest. So you are an author, so you have content. The content that you can use to offer for free to pull people a little bit closer, maybe it's a free chapter, maybe it's a little extra content that you've created about the book, maybe it's a video series that you can put out some provocative questions that the book answers. Whatever it is that you're putting out there, obviously make it free. You'll have to make a choice in some cases about whether that content needs to have an email provided in order for you to offer that content. That's a great way to build your email list, obviously. I believe we have a whole session on digital marketing, and that's something that we're going to cover. But for now, in the marketing plan, really think about the kind of content that you're willing to give up for free in order to get somebody a little bit closer to you in purchasing the full content, which is the book. And let me just say, one of the most occurring errors I think I see for all marketers, not just authors, is to too quickly ask for the sale. If you're just blasting out messages like my book's available, buy it on Amazon for whatever, that's too fast. A lot of times to generate interest, you're going to need to pull them a little bit closer with the opportunity to experience your content and then think about the purchase. So finally, we're at that part where they're interested, they're certainly aware, and now you want to try to close the sale. So this section of your marketing plan is really about conversion and, in some cases, building momentum to create new buyers that aren't in your immediate circle. So one of the easiest offers that people sort of go to sometimes with products is a discount price offer. That certainly is attractive. Everybody loves a bargain. but you want to be a little bit careful about offering your content at a discount right off the bat. It does have some implications in setting, sort of establishing the value of your content if you're going out right away with some discount offers. So another way to get around that in terms of sweetening the deal and making it a no-brainer for the potential reader to buy your book is that you can offer an incentive along with the purchase. So it's similar to content marketing, only instead this time we're offering maybe an extra set of content or some other benefit once the consumer has purchased. Now, of course, you want to make sure that that benefit is highly attractive. One of the tactics, and this may or may not apply to your genre, that we have seen is that we have seen authors who are maybe writing a business book or some sort of personal growth book offer a video series along with the purchase of the book. So, there might be a 3, 4, 5 series video that goes along with some additional explanation of concepts in the book. You can put a value on that. So that could be a $50 or $100 value of a video series. And now when you're asking someone to say, hey, purchase this $20 book and you get this $50 video series, now that sounds like a fairly good, compelling call to action. Some of you may be asking the question, well, how do I fulfill such an offer? And obviously this is a great excuse for you to pull people back to your website. Your website, obviously, I assume you have one, and that's something you should seriously consider. If you don't have one, is a great hub for these kinds of offers. So you could say, go buy the book wherever books are sold, and then come back and send in the receipt, a digital copy of the receipt, and it will unlock some of these benefits. So I hope this discussion of the sort of format of a good marketing plan for a book has been helpful. I know it can feel really overwhelming, to think about a complex marketing plan, but I really encourage you to keep it very simple. If you focus in on the exact kind of readers that you're looking for, you capture a little bit of research, get some reaction, from potential readers on what they're most interested in, the kind of title or words that they're going to react to the most, and then you wrap that into your messaging, and then you take that messaging and consider, how am I going to generate awareness? How am I going to generate interest? And then how am I going to close the sale with conversion? That's really, the most simple elements of a marketing plan. And trust me when I say, if you do that, you'll probably be in the upper 10 to 20% of authors who haven't really thought through that as well as maybe you have. Now, there are a lot of blogs, a lot of videos from a lot of good marketing experts out there, which I encourage you to do a little Google work and find some of those. I think you'll find a lot of useful things out there. But for those of you who I believe are paid subscribers to this program, we have a marketing template that you can download, and that will give you a great leg up on starting your book marketing plan.